Welcome to Retiring Well. Listen, we got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about the evolution of technology when it comes to financial investments. Mike's going to be talking about the evolution of the phone and how that relates to mutual funds. And in another segment, we're going to be talking about the 3 reasons why you might not like mutual funds. And in the last segment, we're going to be talking about goals, strategies, tools, and how they need to interplay with each other. So stay tuned. Give me a great show.
Retiring Well, brought to you by Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan. Retiring Well, helping you plan for a successful and comfortable retirement. Retiring Well, plan to retire well.
Welcome to Retiring Well. I'm your host, Michael Reese, and we've got a great show for you this week. We are talking about mutual funds, and we're going to hit on 3 reasons why you may not want to have mutual funds in your portfolio. Maybe 3 reasons we don't like them maybe as much as some other tools. Now, again, when I say that, please understand we're not going to try to tell you that there's some tool that is always good or always bad. But it is important that you understand that while mutual funds have been really terrific tools in the past, today technology is helping us get even better tools to help you achieve your retirement goals. You need to know about them. So in order to help you understand how all this works, I just want to share a little story with you. So I want you to think back to in your past a little while. And remember, I don't know if you know this, but when were mutual funds invented? Well, the answer is, I think the first mutual fund, I want to call it the Massachusetts Investment Company, all the way back in like 1924. So mutual funds have been around a long time. And what I want you to think about is your telephone. Now, telephones have been around a long time too, haven't they? I mean, I don't know when Alexander Graham Bell did, the first phone call and all that kind of stuff. I don't know the date, but I know it's been a while. And maybe you're like me, all right? Maybe you're like me. I remember when I was a kid how telephones worked, right? Now think about this. I remember when the phone rang, way back when, the first thing is you had to listen for your ring, because remember, we were on party lines. Remember those? And then the big day was, oh, wow, we got our first telephone line. It's just ours. And even when I was a kid in the 80s or 70s and 80s, I remember we had the one phone in the kitchen. It had the really long cord that could stretch halfway across the house. I mean, you know how it was. I remember if my sister was on the phone, I couldn't get on the phone. I mean, you know how all that works. You remember those days. Remember how phones they had like a dial? Remember that? Remember how you have to actually dial a phone? Well, now, what do phones look like today? Well, I think I've got one in my pocket. Phones today, gosh, they look like this, right? This is an iPhone. That's right here. That's what a phone is today. We all have these things. My kids have these things. I've got a daughter who's 11. She's getting ready to go into junior high. She's got one of these things. We all have our own phones. Do you know that there's more computing power in this thing, just this little thing, than what NASA had available when they put their first man on a moon? Right? I mean, so more power here than NASA put a man on a moon with less computing power than what's in this. I mean, that's pretty amazing. But my point is this. Phones have changed, haven't they? Technology, I mean, we have gone from this big old bulky rotary phone, right, to remember, then we had the touch-tone phones, and then remember the first cell phones, they had these big bags, and you'd plug them in the car, and now we've got this. Well, guess what? Technology, it doesn't just affect phones. It affects everything, including investments. But here's something interesting for you. To what degree have mutual funds changed since they started back in 1924? Gosh, our phone has changed remarkably over just the past 20 years. Right? iPhones weren't even around 20 years ago. Our phones have changed dramatically. What about mutual funds? How have they changed? Well, the answer is they haven't really changed at all. with one difference. The very first mutual fund was a balanced fund. It basically invested in stocks, bonds, everything. It was a balanced approach. Today, mutual funds focus on different areas, but guess what? They're basically the same thing that they were when they started. They're the same darn thing. So you need to think about that with your portfolio. If you have a portfolio that's comprised of basically mutual funds, it's like you've got a house full of phones that have dials on them and long extension cords. There might be a better way to accomplish your objectives. And throughout the rest of the show, we're going to talk about that. So don't go away. We're going to be right back.
Welcome to Retiring Well. Guys, that was a great episode that Mike did on the evolution of a phone. Now, this is going to date me, but when I was a kid, we didn't have these iPhones, right? Now, it was a great way to escape parents because they didn't know where you were at. You had to actually have a phone that you could get to on the other end just to call them and let them know.
Yeah, they weren't tracking your every step, right?
No. So that was a great period of time to be growing up. My sons didn't have it so easy. We could track exactly where they were at all times. So, although they got smart with that because they could just start leaving their phones at places, and then we wouldn't know if they moved on, right? So I guess every age has its new way, doesn't it? So anyway, I'm happy today to be joined by Jack Klunder. He's one of our investment advisors now starting in our Cadillac office. So Jack, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I went to Hope College and majored in math with secondary education and started teaching 14 years ago. And through that, started teaching personal finance and just started learning a lot about this world and really piqued my interest. So I called up Centennial, being that they're an education first type company, and they came into my classroom and we started a relationship, and that's how I've ended up here, just haven't stopped learning.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something that where we started actually a Petoskey office several years back, and then a Gaylord office, and now with the Cadillac office. And that's where we just encourage you, as you're watching the television show and one of those locations might be more convenient than here in Traverse City, we'd love the opportunity just to sit down and have a conversation with you, give you a no cost, no obligation second opinion in regards to your retirement planning.
All right. Now, you want to stay tuned because in the next segment, I'm going to give you the 3 reasons why you don't want to be in mutual funds, and I'm going to give you a bonus one as a 4th, so stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Jack Klunder, and I'm a financial advisor with Centennial Wealth Advisory. We are now opening an office in the Cadillac area and surrounding cities. So if you have any retirement goals or questions that you'd like to go over, we have a no obligation free consultation. Please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to meet with you.
Today's retirement challenges can be mastered. Knowledge is power because you can confidently plan ahead and make educated financial decisions for a successful and comfortable retirement. We are Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning, serving all of northern Michigan with offices in Traverse City, Cadillac, Petoskey, and Gaylord. And we invite you to an informative and exciting live event with a complimentary gourmet dinner. You'll learn highlights of the new Tax Reform Act, the difference between the fiduciary and suitability standard of care, how an IRA gets taxed to a surviving spouse, how 2 similar portfolios can end up with 2 drastically different results, what a bull market is and how long it can last, and much more. Call 888-608-5825 to register and choose the date and location that works best for you. Tuesday, August 6th at the Evergreen Resort in Cadillac. Thursday, August 8th at Big Buck Brewery in Gaylord, or Tuesday, August 13th at Stafford's Bay View Inn in Petoskey. The live event starts at 6 p.m. and is free to attend with a complimentary gourmet dinner to follow, but seating is limited and fills quickly. Call 888-608-5825 to reserve your seats today. There is no cost and no obligation. Don't miss this important live event. Educated financial decisions. Call 888-608-5825 today.
All right, the 3 reasons why we don't like mutual funds. Now again, I'm going to qualify this. Mutual funds can have a place under certain circumstances, but I want to give you 3 reasons why you maybe might second guess them. Number 1, mutual funds have fees. Every mutual fund, if you look in the prospectus, now that's that book they give you that's just a bunch of fine print, but in there's what they call the expense ratio. The expense ratio is the general and administrative fees and research costs that they're charging you to run that mutual fund. Now, there's some fees that they don't have to disclose to you. There's what they would call the hidden costs. Barron's did a study in 2013, and where the average mutual fund that they studied had an expense ratio of 1.19%. The corresponding hidden costs were found to be about 1.44%. So when you're in the mutual fund environment, between the fees they disclose to you and the fees they maybe don't have to disclose to you, you can see that they can get quite hefty. Now, the second reason maybe we don't like to be in mutual funds is the lack of transparency. When you're in a mutual fund, you can't see them buying and selling. They can have 1,000 securities and you'd be hard pressed to see exactly what you own. Now, a lot of times you can Google the mutual fund and you can get maybe their top 10 holdings, maybe their top 25 holdings to kind of get an idea, what they're invested in. But you can't see them buying, you can't see them selling. So and if there's fees being charged or fees incurring, you can't see those as well. So we don't like them because of the lack of transparency. One of the third reasons we don't like mutual funds, though, is what we call the passivity of mutual funds. You have to understand that mutual funds have objectives. They file these objectives with SEC. So, for example, I can be a large cap mutual fund, which is just a mutual fund that, by objective, is going to hold large company stocks, right? That's what they file with SEC. That's what they're going to hold. 2008 comes along and the market's tanking. What does that large cap mutual fund manager do? I mean, by objective, he has to hold large company stocks, right? Now, you'd like to think possibly they might be able to go to cash, right, to protect you in periods like that. And believe it or not, in that prospectus, that little booklet they give you, sometimes in fine print, it actually says they can go to cash. But you'd be hard-pressed to find a large cap mutual fund manager that went to cash in that period of time, because guess what, folks? They don't make money being in cash. So what we find is this, what we call systematic risk. Now, all that is that's the term in our industry, is what you call financial jargon for, all ships rising and falling with the tide. Because you're going to find all large cap mutual fund managers in the 2008 lost quite a bit during that period. Now, so we look at these mutual funds. Sometimes they have great qualities, because if you're in a 401k, there's fewer choices. So most likely you're working with mutual funds. So again, there can be some advantages to them, especially sometimes when you're dealing with smaller amounts of money. But when you get to a certain point when you've got sufficient savings and you have other alternatives possibly available to you, you're going to want to possibly seek those out. Again, number one reason is the passivity of them, the lack of transparency, and then those fees that are associated with them. So those are some good reasons you might not like the mutual funds, but I'm going to give you a bonus reason maybe to not like them, and that is the tax inefficiency of them. I can't tell you how many people in 2008 had a portfolio that lost money, but at the end of the year, they got a 1099 showing that they were going to actually have to pay tax on income. And now they're trying to figure this out. How did we end up having a taxable situation when our portfolio, our mutual funds actually lost money? Well, when you enter into a mutual fund, you're entering in as a shareholder in that mutual fund. They could have held a position for 30 years, and it had this built-in capital gain associated with it, meaning it raised in value during that period of time. And you might have just gotten involved in that mutual fund the day before. They go to sell the mutual fund, and you get taxes if you held it for the 30-year period. So that's where a lot of those cases where the portfolio lost, but they had to pay tax happen. So again, mutual funds in some cases can be a good thing, but in a lot of ways can be a bad thing, and those are the main reasons why. So I encourage you, if you want your portfolio to be looked at, you want to see the risks you're taking, you want to see the fees you're paying, encourage you to give us a call. Welcome back to Retiring Well. Listen, guys, I just want to qualify in that segment, and I just did. There are places where mutual funds can be a good thing, right? There's, not any one product is bad under all circumstances or good under all circumstances. So they all have their place, right? But as a general rule, I just wanted our audience to recognize, this is maybe some of the reasons you might want to look at some alternate investments maybe, because mutual funds are not always the answer. But what has most people been introduced to? Mutual funds. So with that, Nick, I just want to introduce you to the show. You're now an advisor with a firm. You're now in Gaylord, Michigan. So Nick, could you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Traverse City, but now I reside in Gaylord with my wife, Amanda, and we have 3 children. In the past, I worked 8 years for the same company, managing 50 different people in the golf resort business. From there, I spent a lot of time working on the weekends, and with a growing family, I wanted to be able to be around that family much more. Growing up in Traverse City, I knew Larry Flynn from church, and when the opportunity presented itself, I couldn't turn it down.
All right.
Well, great. Well, Nick, that's great that you're in the Gaylord area. I mean, it seems to be such a growing area, and a lot of our retirees are settling in that way. Being that we're headquartered here in Traverse City, and then also having locations in Gaylord, Petoskey, and in Cadillac, it's just much more convenient for folks that maybe want to visit to just drive right down the road and meet with you in Gaylord. So if you're in those outlying areas or a little outside of Traverse City and you don't want to maybe drive into town, then obviously give us a call, and we're happy to meet Nick or Jack in Cadillac, or even Nick, you drive up to Petoskey occasionally as well, too, a little closer. So those are some of the areas that you can meet with us here at Centennial Wealth Advisory.
Okay, I want you to stay tuned, because in the next segment, Mike is going to be talking about goals, strategies, tools, and why it's very important that once you understand what your goals are, putting the proper financial instruments in place that meet those goals. So stay tuned.
Hi there, my name is Nick Greenman. I'm one of the financial advisors here at Centennial Wealth Advisory. Brand new to the Gaylord office. I'm here full-time now, and I'll also be commuting back to the Petoskey office as well. I'd love to hear your story and learn if I could help you manage your retirement needs.
If you're retiring soon, it's likely you have many decisions ahead of you. One of the larger ones is Social Security. How are you going to take it? Are you going to take it early? Are you going to take it at your full retirement age, or maybe even delay it? Social Security needs to be viewed as an asset. If you live a long life, it's likely you can collect a large sum of money over time with those payments directed to you. How, though, folks misjudge Social Security commonly is how it's taxed. How are you going to pay tax on that for the rest of your life? And it's important to factor that in when to take it. And also paired with your other assets you may have, it may make great differences as well. If you don't have a Social Security tax plan built into your retirement, it's extremely important and could cost you thousands over your lifetime if done improperly. We would love to sit down with you here at Centennial Wealth Advisory and talk through what that looks like on a larger scale and see if we can help you have a successful retirement.
So today in Chalk Talk, we are discussing what I like to refer to as the financial planning process, okay, the planning process. And, this is one of those areas that whatever you're doing, if you don't mind, I hope I can get you just to stop and pay attention with me for a couple of minutes, because of everything that I ever talk about on this show, this right here may be the most important thing that you ever get on this show at any time. And it has to do with the planning process. It has to do with making sure you're doing a good job when it comes to your retirement planning and how it all works. Now, whenever you look at the planning process, there are 3 levels of planning. We have goals, we have strategies, and we have tools. Now, the problem that we have in our industry, in the financial industry, is that generally speaking, the way that we are trained as advisors, we are trained on doing one thing particularly, which is how do we sell various tools? Tools are things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate funds, etc. So we are trained to focus on and sell tools. Okay, so let's go back. Those are things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, etc. Now, here's the problem. Whenever you ever read that book from Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, what does he say in that book that effective people do? And whenever you plan for anything, do you start and focus on the end here? No, we start here. We start with the goals. You know, Stephen Covey says you begin with the end in mind, but basically what are we doing? We need to start with the goals. Whenever you think about your retirement planning, you have to start by thinking about, well, gosh darn it, what do you want? What are your goals? Now, whenever I talk to someone about their goals in retirement, what I'm really referring to is they might say, well, my goal is I want a certain amount of income per month, or I want to travel, or whatever. But if you dig a little deeper, generally speaking, these are the kinds of things that people want in their retirement, their real core goals. It might be something about maintaining lifestyle. We hear that. Or maintaining FI, which stands for financial independence. It might be don't be a burden on the children. Boy, I hear that one a lot. Or freedom. You know, I hear all the time, I really want the freedom to do what I want to do when I want to do it. Those are the goals. That's what we're really trying to accomplish in retirement. Well, if you can get clear, so now think about this, if you can get clear on your goals, well then the next step is to say, okay, here's what I want. Now, what kind of strategies do I need to support those goals? Right? What kind of strategies? Well, if you want to maintain lifestyle, for example, you probably need, some kind of an income type of strategy. Well, you've got your portfolio, you probably need some kind of investment strategy. You also, if you think about it, you know what happens a lot in retirement? Taxes become a big deal. You might need a tax strategy. You might need a healthcare strategy or an estate planning strategy. You might need an inflation strategy. There's a number of strategies that you may need to support these core goals. But where do we start? Do we start with the tools? Do we start with the strategy? Where do we start? We start with what's important, your goals. You get crystal clear on the goals. Then you identify what strategies do you need to support those goals. Get crystal clear there. Once you're crystal clear on the goals and the strategies, guess what? Tools become a piece of cake, don't they? It's kind of like you make a pie. You're trying to make an apple pie. What's the goal? I want to make an apple pie. What's the strategy? Well, I got to follow this recipe. What are the tools? Sugar, apples, more sugar, right? But that's how it works. And the problem we have in our industry is, where do financial advisors spend all their time? They focus over here. If you want to succeed in your retirement, you got to start and you got to focus here, and every meeting with your advisor should be, how are we doing over here?
Today's retirement challenges can be mastered. Knowledge is power, because you can confidently plan ahead and make educated financial decisions for a successful and comfortable retirement. We are Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning, serving all of northern Michigan with offices in Traverse City, Cadillac, Petoskey, and Gaylord. And we invite you to an informative and exciting live event with a complimentary gourmet dinner. You'll learn highlights of the new Tax Reform Act, the difference between the fiduciary and suitability standard of care, how an IRA gets taxed to a surviving spouse, how two similar portfolios can end up with two drastically different results, what a bull market is and how long it can last, and much more. Call 888-608-5825 to register and choose the date and location that works best for you. Tuesday, August 6th at the Evergreen Resort in Cadillac. Thursday, August 8th at Big Buck Brewery in Gaylord, or Tuesday, August 13th at Stafford's Bayview Inn in Petoskey. The live event starts at 6 p.m. and is free to attend with a complimentary gourmet dinner to follow. But seating is limited and fills quickly. Call 888-608-5825 to reserve your seats today. There is no cost and no obligation. Don't miss this important live event. Educated Financial Decisions. Call 888-608-5825 today.
Welcome back to Retiring Well. Guys, I really like that segment that Mike did on, goals, strategies, tools. The biggest part of what we do is education. You alluded to that earlier, Jack. I know you've been in education for 14 years, but it's that element that really gives us great gratification in our job. Wouldn't you agree?
For sure. I think it's been really fun for me to take my mathematical, analytical mind and really apply it to the planning portion of this job. And we get to look at what potential pitfalls might be, really lack of planning. I think I see more so lately as people are coming into the Cadillac office, they have some products, but they don't have maybe a plan. And so that's been a fun part to just kind of piece that puzzle together and help them understand exactly what they're getting, the good and the bad of each of these different products and how it might play into their plan.
Yeah. Now, we take that for granted, but I can't tell you how many people come into our office and they say, nobody ever talked to me about this stuff. I feel like I knew more from this meeting with you guys than I ever got from my previous advisor. I can't tell you how many times we've heard that. Nick, now I can't golf. Okay, you've been in golf management, had to teach people golf. I can't think of a harder thing to do than that.
Oh, absolutely,
Right?
yeah.
But on the same line, happen to teach somebody fundamentally something that's probably hard for them to do, right? So Nick, you've been in golf pro growth management, so you know a little bit about trying to have to teach somebody a very hard game like golf, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a challenge from time to time, especially when you're starting out and fresh and you don't have that background and that experience. And that has kind of helped me transition into the finance world as well. I mean, when we're talking with Centennial Wealth, using that holistic approach where we talk about tax planning, long-term care, estate planning, kind of touching all those bases with each client and making sure that we're fulfilling all their needs.
Right. I appreciate that, guys. Now, I have a lot of these clients, soon to be retired. They look at me and they go, well, Larry, you're not too far behind us, are you? He's like, guys, I'm going to be there for a little while. But I love having young guys like you getting into this business and grasping a hold of it as well as you guys are. Education's the big thing. A lot of times people just have to understand the fundamentals. They have to understand the pros and cons of various, strategies that they might be in so that they can make the best informed decision that they can make on their own. So wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Definitely. All right. Well, I want to thank you for being with us today. Listen, our show reaches all of northern Michigan, but it's very important for us that if you're maybe somebody that's in the Cadillac area, Jack, you'd love to meet with them, I'm sure. If you're in the Gaylord, Petoskey area, Nick, you're right there full-time ready to meet with them. So again, thank you guys for being part of our show today. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.